You either walk in your story and own it, or you walk outside of your story and you hustle for your worthiness. You either walk in your story and own it, or you walk beside your story, outside of your story, I would say, and hustle for your worthiness. Hustle for your worthiness. Think about spending every single day trying to prove that you're worthwhile, that you belong. It's tiring, isn't it? Now, it sounds weird when we talk about owning our story, so I want to be clear about it. My background is journalism, so I'm going to be very specific. I like details. We already have a story. We have our family, our passions, even our trauma informs us. They're like little holes that you see in a tree. You can tell when it was damaged 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. But it's a marking of the tree. So even our trauma and the things that we survive and thrive on are part of our personality. But that's different than owning your story. All of us have a story, but how many of us actually own it? Now, I can stand up here and talk about it because for a long time, I did not own my story. My story is this. Background in journalism, 2 degrees, Master's in Magazine Publishing from Northwestern. Shout out to the Wildcats. I've been all over the country, so you can realize that. Just get used to my crowd. I'm probably going to hate where all of you have lived at some period of time. I met my wife, fell in love, proposed, we got married, and then within a month we found out we were pregnant. This is the exact same time I decided to become an entrepreneur. Just sit with that. Y'all, some of y'all introduced yourselves to me, so that's why I can hear the oohs and ahs. You know what was about to happen. Baby boy comes 9 months later. Pardon me. Baby boy comes 9 months later. My wife goes back to work about 3 months after that. Actually 4 months, so it's pretty good where she was. And it's me and my baby boy. I'm the primary caregiver. At the exact same time, I start working on my first app. It's called So Quotable. Allows you to capture people's quotes. So if you and I have a conversation, you say something amazing, I can capture that quote and share it with the world. It sounds kind of basic now. It is about 2014. It was innovative at the time. My son would wake up at 6 a.m. every morning on the dot. On the dot, like clockwork. I have a really good sense of time. He probably gets that from me. So I would wake up at 3:15 a.m. every weekday. From 3:15 a.m. to exactly 6 a.m., like I said, clockwork, I'll work on this app. Now, mind you, I'm still trying to provide for my family too, so I'm still writing for different publications. I just started writing books, so I'm doing all this stuff within, 2 hours, 45 minutes? Man, that was from September to March of the following year. Felt like forever. I get the app done. As it's coming out, I get a call from the TED conference. How many of you are familiar with the TED Talks? I have been to the TED conference a couple of times, but never spoken. They call. Okay, so let's lay a scenario. Got an on phone at home. I just went through all this from 3:15 a.m., 3:15 to 6 a.m., working on this app. I spent an entire day with my son. My wife gets home at 6 p.m. We have our dinner time, our alone time. What is that? The boy gets home, gets to sleep around 7:30. And I do the same thing over again. And now, I have to do a freaking TED Talk. I'm trying to watch my language. But I get it together. I do the TED Talk. I love it. It's great. That's one of the reasons why I'm on the stage right now, because I realize I love speaking. 4 minutes of my life changed my life. That was 2014. When I did the TED Talk, I got the attention of a friend of a friend. It's always good to know people who he and his friend working on an app called Cuddler, which Mike had mentioned briefly. So how many of you have heard of Tinder or Grindr or those apps? I'm not saying that you use them, just that you heard them. Okay, no judgment from me. Those are hookup apps, as we used to call them back in my day. They're working on an app, and then when we joined them, that was for hugs. So imagine a Tinder or a Grindr, where if you want to have a hug, and there's someone over in the auditorium or whatever that wants to have a hug, it'll pop up on the app and say, Sally wants to have a hug right now too. And you two connect and have a hug. Now I'm studying technology, intimacy, how people connect. That's my journalism background, which I'll get a little bit more into later. You'll start to understand the different pieces of it. So I was like, this is the next wave. We have hookups. And we have superficial connections, particularly pre-COVID. Remember this pre-COVID. So you see people at like the supermarket. You see your neighbor that you wave to occasionally. Or you have people, frankly, that you sleep with. But there was no in between. How do we build bonds beyond what was popular at the time, a Facebook or a LinkedIn? There was this white space there. We ended up launching the app September of that year. My son had just turned 1. Same schedule, 3:15 to 6 a.m. So I got off the train and launched my app. And they got back on the train and launched their app as a co-founder. We became the number 1 app in the world, twice. Within the first week, we had 100,000 users and 10,000 completed codes. It was a metric, so it was impressive at the time. We were on the equivalent of Regis and Kathy Lee. I think Regis had moved on by that point. We were on Late Night with Seth Meyers. We were on the cover of major publications. I still got my little boy. Now he's 14, 15 months old. And I'm managing the number 1 app literally in the world. How am I supposed to do this? 3:15 a.m. to 6 a.m. We went number 1 twice, like I mentioned. At our peak, we had 250,000 users. That's a lot. It's a lot. You ever try to get 250,000 customers? Like, a lot of you are entrepreneurs, so that's why I'm giving these numbers to you. You know the deal. Getting 1 customer is hard. And then we started getting calls to sell the app. And right after my son's 2nd birthday, actually, it was like 2 weeks after his 2nd birthday, we sold the app. We bootstrapped it, which means we put our own money into it. Which also means, as a lot of y'all know, we got the entire pie. We split it. It was what's called sweat equity. We didn't have investors. The investors we talked to, some of y'all's reactions, you could imagine. It's like, hey, we have 100,000 users. We can have people for hugs. Can we get like $5 million so we can grow this thing? Are any of y'all VCs? Or have any of y'all invested? All right. So otherwise, if y'all are VCs, I would have got it left by now. Such a crazy idea. A lot of rejection with that. But we had to bet on ourselves. The thing was, here I am, juggling my son, not literally, but juggling the son, juggling the startup, juggling the life. And I'm married too, so I'm still trying to have a connection with my partner. And we sell that app, number 1 twice, and I still haven't owned my story. I'll give you a quick story. Around the time that cover was at its peak, right before we got number 1 for the 2nd time, pardon me, I got a call from a major publication. I'll leave it at that. We'll change names. Major publication. They want to interview us. So me and my 2 co-founders, one of my other co-founders is active. So they want to interview us. Set the interview. My background is journalism, so I know the deal. I'm like, cool. This is, we get this publication, we're on the map again. And I was right, we went to number 1 again. We set a phone call. And how many of y'all have kids? Let's just be clear. How many of y'all have kids, say, under 2? Okay, do y'all remember when your kids were PTSD? No offense to the veterans, I have veterans in our family, but it's a separate type of PTSD than we have. So still thinking about that today, that's why I'm shaking. My kid would have been 18 months And something happened the morning of the phone call. Now, again, I'm a journalist, some of y'all are journalists. You don't reschedule for this publication. You don't reschedule. And my man is coming from both ends. It's gonna get a little, green stuff come out of here, brown stuff come over here. It might have been the reverse, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Some of y'all are eating this stuff. I'm not that far removed from it, so I can still talk about this stuff. And I get the phone call. And a pleasant person, again, I'm a journalist, so we're the toughest on the journalists. They were great. And I'm like, yes, I'm trying to be articulate, and I'm wiping up poop. Let's try to give you PG. Wiping up poop and throw up. And remember, we used to have this brown couch, and it looked like the couch was alive. And this stuff started shooting all over it, I swear to God. And I get off the phone, and again, I'm a journalist. I'm used to being on the other side. I'm used to interviewing people. And here I am. Later on, I ended up being a cover story. I didn't feel pride. I didn't feel excitement. I felt shame. I felt shame. I felt shame because even before he was a rock star, he's in the news this week. Biden Elon Musk wasn't wiping up baby poop while I was getting interviewed for the cover of Newsweek. I know Steve Jobs, who I met back when I lived in Silicon Valley years ago, when he was alive, he was barely connected to his kids, let's be clear about that. But he was not trying to clean up, throw up, and all kinds of stuff while he was being interviewed for the cover of State of Wall Street Journal. I did not fit into that. And again, with my time in Silicon Valley, they made it very clear that I did not fit into the culture. I didn't know my own worth. #1 app in the world twice, while being the primary caregiver of my wife and I's first son. TED Talks, the whole nine. I didn't feel worthy enough. The next year was my last year. And I'm a very driven, very strategic person. You see my shirt, it says focus. I always got a plan. For the first time since sophomore year of college, I had no plan. I wasn't a journalist anymore because I just sold my startup. So I wasn't going to go back to that. I was an author, but my books hadn't done super well. So it wasn't like, I'm just going to retire and just do books all day. And then I found out my second kid was coming. So I better get my shit together. Around that time, a friend of mine, journalism community, connected with me and said, hey, I know you're trying to figure out the next step. Inc. magazine is looking for a columnist. I think you should go for it. I was like, all right. I don't know what I'm doing. Got 2 years, got another 1 week, sure, let's give it a shot. Talk to them. Pardon me. And they said, your background sounds awesome, but what do you want to write about? And I was like, and I swear that's exactly how it went. I was like, well, I just told my story, so I don't rarely talk about that. But I don't fit. I lived in Silicon Valley for 3 years. I don't fit that. I don't fit. Everyone I met in Silicon Valley who was considered successful, who was on the cover of these magazines, is a straight, white, Ivy League dropout, super nerdy, leaning towards antisocial, who thinks they're king of the universe. Keep it real. I was there. That's what I'm saying. And here I am, a married, approaching middle-aged, black guy, raising his 1.5, because I had one coming. My wife is Hindi, black and brown sons, doing a startup about cuddling and getting on the cover of all these publications. So something is off. Either I'm a unicorn, which has another term in Silicon Valley, we get into that. Either I'm a unicorn four-leaf clover, whatever. Or I'm being sold a lie. There has to be, I want to figure out which one is which. It's either I'm lucky as hell, or there's a whole lot of these, what I call non-traditional entrepreneurs around. So if a lot of us are around, then why aren't we showing up? Are our ideas not good enough? Are they unrealistic? Or are the resources not there for the different groups that I belong to? Are we underestimated to the point where our ideas, as one great person said, shrivel up like a raisin in the sun? There's a gap there. I want to explore that gap. And they're like, okay. So I started a column. It got popular. About a year later, I started working on a book called The Bites of an Entrepreneur. But before I got to the book, I started getting emails, even phone calls. People were still doing phone calls those days. About how I represented something that they didn't see. My good friend Nilla Merchant, she has a book called The Power of Loneliness. And she talks about something called signaling. Signaling, like a signal. Like things are foggy, there's a lighthouse or a buoy, I think they call it, right? Little thing with a light that tells you where to go. By me being ready to share my story, other people who that story resonated with said, yes, I see myself in you. And in that signaling, I started to see myself in them. I told my story, so other people said, yes, that's my story too. You might be at the end of it, you might be at the beginning of it, but I see your journey. I see you. And when they started doing that, I was like, oh, that's my worth. But I had to step up first. First, you have to signal. Otherwise, how is you proud of that? So that's my story. So when it comes to bringing your worth, it really comes down to three basic things. I didn't say easy, but basic, simple. The first thing is that every single thing is a partnership. I don't care if you're CEO of the company, you're making $50 million a year, and you're hiring somebody, or you're part of the janitorial services at a local school. Everyone has their particular worth. That varies over time. Not your worth, but how you show up to bring your worth. So number one, every single thing is a partnership. Number two, do not wait for permission. Do not wait for permission. I cannot emphasize this more. If you're waiting for somebody to tell you, yeah, attaboy, attaboy, keep going. Back to the signaling. They're waiting on you to step up, for you to represent yourself, however you represent yourself. Then they'll get aboard. So number one, everything's a partnership. Number two, don't wait for permission. And number three, the toughest one, everything and everyone has a legacy. Every single thing. There are no mistakes. Every single one of us has a purpose, even in our trauma.